Yo, Pierre, it's Pierre. Villains can make or break a franchise, and in anime, this is commonplace. Some of my favorite and most memorable characters in anime are the villains. So I thought in the spirit of October and bad guys, I'd make an anime villain tier list. All these villains are from shows I've personally seen. By the way, to clear things up, the definition of villain is used very loosely here. Itachi Uchiha is on the list, and we know he was technically not evil. So for all intents and purposes, villain means antagonist in today's context. As with every video, my anime list is in the description if you want to add me or catch up on what I've seen. With that all over with, let's get to ranking. Yo, we're ranking these quote-unquote villains right now. I think we should just start off really light because these are like barely in the category of villains. Like, I guess they're just antagonists. We got Oikawa Toru. I think this guy is pretty goated. If you haven't seen Haikyuu, so this is like basically the starter villain, I guess, like the primary antagonist at first. So like basically just the obstacle you have to overcome. Once the main character beats the first villain, they normally just go away for basically the rest of the show. But the thing with Oikawa, he pretty much stays in the limelight for the entirety of the show. So I think that makes him really enjoyable to watch. Like he's a very entertaining person to watch. Good villain, like he has a presence on the court. And for like a volleyball show, I think he's a really good villain, so I'm gonna rank him an A. Next up, we've got Ushiwaka or Ushijima. He has a weird name.
Alright, for this next clip, I accidentally say Oikawa instead of Ushiwaka like 10 times. So whenever it says meant to say Ushiwaka, I meant to say Ushiwaka instead of Oikawa.
He is on like the OP team of Haikyuu, like the team that is, oh my god, how are we gonna beat these guys and get to nationals? But the thing is about that team is it's literally just Oikawa. And I don't know if you can see this red-haired guy in the back. Literally just Oikawa and that guy named Tendo. And they are just the entire team, basically. So you know this Oikawa guy has to be powerful if this #1 ranked team is literally just because of him, basically. But Ushiwaka pretty much carries, and the team is kind of sculpted around him. But with that said, yes, it's an interesting dynamic, but it kind of defeats the coolness of his team, because yeah, he's really cool by himself. Thinking about Oikawa, he's really cool by himself, but his team almost amplifies how cool he is, because they're all in tune with him. They're all pretty much like their own people, but they all respect him like that. Ushiwaka, he's kind of just like the master of this team that has like no identity besides being Ushiwaka's team. He's not bad by any means, just I think Oikawa is a lot better. Oh, next up, we're kind of getting into actual shonen villains now. Like, these are evil people. We've got Muzan Kibutsuji. I used to never be able to say his last name. I used to say like Kitsubuchi, but I think it's Kibutsuji. Hopefully I didn't just embarrass myself and say it backwards. But Muzan, dope design. First off, let me get that off the fucking bat, because we're all thinking it. Michael Jackson. Yes, he looks a lot like Michael Jackson. He's got the drip. He's got the hee. But Muzan is definitely a demon. I think he's like the demon king. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but he's definitely like the ruler of all demons. This guy starts the demon shit. You know, he makes demons. Really cool. I never understood. Like, this was really cool because it was unexpected. Tanjiro, who, if you don't know, is the main character of Demon Slayer, who's what Muzan's in. He ran into Muzan in like, I'm not gonna say like 5th episode. I'm pretty sure it was later than that, but it felt like super early because you're expecting a huge build-up in like maybe the last episode he runs into Muzan, but he runs into Muzan like midway through the series, just out of nowhere. It's just like, oh my god, I smell Muzan. He fucking runs into him, which yeah, it was really cool because it was unexpected, but it kind of took away the badassness of Muzan. But definitely still has a huge presence in that world. Like, he is basically a driving force for the whole show. But I'm just gonna leave him at B for now. I'll make adjustments at the end. Okay, next up we have Enmu. They actually don't say his name in the anime yet, which is pretty weird. I had to find out his name, but Enmu, he's like the next villain for the upcoming Mugen Train movie, which is for the Demon Slayer, the next arc. It's gonna be all about him and the train. From what I've seen in the manga, not to make this a manga review, he is a very, very cool villain. Very, very cool. But even just from judging from his design, his whole like weird sadist sort of thing, I don't know if that's the right word. He basically enjoys seeing like inflicting pain. Like, his whole thing is about like, it's like a dream for me, or whatever he always says in the anime. He's a mix between a masochist and a sadist, I think, because when he was getting the shit kicked out of him, he was like in there moaning and stuff, you know? Like, I'm not trying to make this weird, but he was in there moaning, like when Muzan was punishing him and stuff, like having a time of his life. But then he was also saying how much he enjoyed seeing the other demons get killed. He was saying how much of a dream it was like for him. But yeah, I think that really makes him a lot more interesting than some villains, because yes, some villains, like, obviously you think they like hurting people because they do it, but this guy flat out says, he's like, yeah, I just enjoy seeing others in pain. Even if it's more demons, he just loves seeing pain. I think he'll be like a very interesting villain to watch in the upcoming movie. But for now, I don't know too much about him, but I do know from what I know about him, I know he's very badass, so I'm gonna leave him at a B. Next up, we've got Hisoka. If you have watched my anime characters video, Hisoka was on there. It was kind of a mess up, but I don't think it was too bad. He was on there because, yes, I don't see him as a fucking evil person, but as I said at the beginning of this video, I don't really see Itachi as an evil person, so I don't know why I would have had him on my characters list. But nevertheless, here he is on the villains list. He's definitely should be in this list. I know that for a fact. Very liked character. I know Hunter x Hunter fans, they know how much everybody likes Hisoka. He's basically a fucking pedophile. Let's keep it straight. He's a pedophile. How do I put this? He enjoys very much fighting powerful people, like almost to the point of Cooming. Next up, we have Illumi, Hisoka's like sidekick almost for the first arc of Hunter x Hunter. I mean, yeah, it was cool, the whole weird brainwash thing he had going with Killua. I don't know if they explained that more in the manga, but for me personally, I didn't understand that very much. I don't think he was explained enough, and I don't think he had enough screen time to really give him anything other than being like the weird pin guy from the first arc. Next up, we've got Chrollo. One of the coolest designs in Hunter x Hunter for sure, but again, they didn't explain very much about Chrollo at all throughout the entire show. There weren't too many villains in Hunter x Hunter that had as cool of a presence as Chrollo. He was basically, obviously, the leader of the Phantom Troop. Definitely badass, definitely has his presence. You know how strong he is just from watching a little bit of him. I'm not even gonna put him over Enmu. Just, even with the small amount of time Enmu got, I think he is still a cooler villain than Chrollo a little bit. That's just playing favorites, though I don't have really a reason. Next up, we got Uvogin. Uvogin, I think, is heavily underrated because, listen to me, yes, he was basically just a catalyst to demonstrate how strong Kurapika got over the training of his Nen and his new Nen abilities, but no, he was not weak by any sense, and I think he served his purpose very well, and I think he went out like a badass. Most villains, they would have started, begging for their life, whatever, when Kurapika's almost chopping their head off, he's telling them to speak. Nah, Uvogin was like, go to hell, you son of a bitch. That was one of the most badass lines in Hunter x Hunter. I actually just got chills just saying that line. That was one of the best moments in the whole show, and Uvogin was obviously the cause of it, and I think Uvo was an A tier, maybe low A tier villain. Next up, Phaeton. I can hear the fangirls screaming already. Yes, Phaeton's on the list. But besides that, he hasn't done much. He's just on the list. He was there. I forget what the ability was called. He demonstrated his ability. Definitely has a cool design, but we don't know anything about him. But next up, we've got, holy shit, I forget his name. I'll just call him the Bomber. I think everybody can agree. He is not a good villain. He was snarky, but not in like the cool villain snarky. He was just annoying. Next up, we have Pitou. I just like her a lot as a character, or him a lot as a character. Not gonna get too much into that gender thing. It's kind of making my brain hurt. I think that design was really sick. I think the power's really sick, and I think the presence, I spoke a lot about presence in this video already. Pitou's presence in this show was undeniably the greatest for a villain. Even when Netero showed up and had his crazy presence, I think Pitou's presence still had more power behind it in terms of like what the viewer felt. Like we never saw anyone this strong. Don't take this out of context. I loved when Pitou killed Kite. I think that was a great demonstration that Hunter x Hunter wasn't scared to do what other manga and anime didn't do. Normally, they kind of pussyfoot around the whole killing this nice character we just met. We get to finally see how strong this villain is, who we've been kind of like seeing the shadow of her on the moon through the past couple episodes. We just kind of been teased a little bit how strong she is. Finally, she shows up, causes some havoc. I definitely appreciated that. Probably low S, maybe high A tier. Next up, Shiapoof. Shiapoof is underrated because, he's always seen as this weird, like, kind of goofy. He wasn't actively trying to be goofy, but people looked at him as if he was goofy because of how intense his character was. He was basically facing a moral dilemma between following the king and trying to maintain order because Meruem was going against what he should have been doing, being with Komugi. Poof saw that. He was like, I know I should be following the king, and he intensely wanted to follow the king, but he even more intensely wanted to follow the order and make sure things were right and follow what he should be doing.
How do you qualify as a royal guard? No. You fail as a royal guard. It's that simple.
Poof's unwavering devotion was both his strength and his weakness. He had an absolute ideal to live up to, with no room for amendment.
but I think Poof is heavily underrated. I'll put him in bottom of 8. Next up, we have Yuppie. I think he just falls short compared to the other two royal guards. Not that he's bad in any way on his own. Great scenes with him in it. Yes, those scenes at the palace stairs were some of the most vivid memories I have of the show. He definitely had like a good presence, yes, but nothing compared to Pitou. He wasn't as complex as Shia Poof, so I think Yuppie just falls a slightly short. Maybe bottom of B, top of C, I'll put him. Next up, we have Meruem, highly regarded as one of the greatest anime villains. He was a very complex character. So Meruem was facing another moral dilemma similar to Shia Poof, where, you know, he didn't understand why he could relate to this Komugui woman or whatever, and he suddenly didn't want to kill everybody, and he realized the value some humans have, and that really made the viewer think, like, who's really on the bad side here? Just because the humans were the ones we're watching doesn't mean they're the good guy. But I think he's just a B tier. Next up, Light Yagami, another example of someone who was on the characters list. I talked about him there, and if you want to see me talk more about him there, you can go. But he is a lot more complex than Genthru. You see his sort of transcend into madness throughout the series.
I'll take a potato chip and eat it.
Next up, we're starting the Naruto villains off right with Haku and Zabuza. I was going to put them one by one, but I realized I pretty much think the same thing about them both. Haku and Zabuza were part of my favorite arc in Naruto. It started off the show very right. You know, it kind of set the tone that not everything's going to be happy-go-lucky, especially at the end where you see Zabuza finally show emotion after he realized Haku is really dead and he doesn't just view Haku as a tool, and that he was a real human and that they've been through a lot together.
Your words cut deep. Deeper than any blade.
I don't even really know if Naruto reached that peak that they felt at the end of that arc ever again, really. I don't know if I ever liked the show as much as I did there. With that said, we're moving on to Orochimaru, another like Oikawa, where he was pretty much the first villain we see or hear of, and he stays throughout the whole show. He's a very important thing throughout almost the entire show. Itachi. This guy is a fan favorite character. There's no getting around it. If we're going off like his character, he's a very deep character. You know, you can't just describe him with one word or anything like that. But if we're just going off how badass and how much of a presence he has as a villain, yes, he is almost the, I might say the biggest presence besides probably Madara and Naruto. You know, you see that meme of him holding up Sasuke on the wall. You're too weak, Sasuke. It really shows off how many levels above Sasuke and Naruto he is at that point. Next up, we have Pain, overrated in my opinion. I can't say too much, but yeah, don't get mad at me. I don't think he's trash. I just think he's slightly overrated. Oh my god, the greatest villain in Naruto, Pain. No, his ending was fucking terrible. I'll stand by that. His ending was bad. Him getting Talk no Jutsu'd out of just destroying the Hidden Leaf Village, that felt cheap to me. Next up, we have Madara. Madara, yes, has the insane presence I've been talking about all episode. Yes, he is very interesting, has a good backstory, a lot of screen time for the arc he was in, but besides that, he was like briefly mentioned a few arcs before, but that just felt like a cheap, like, oh, I told you about this guy earlier, don't you remember him? He kind of got bitched with that whole Kaguya scenario, but you don't want to hear me talk about that. Okay, moving on from the Naruto villains, we got Tomura. I think Tomura is severely underrated. I think he is fucking cool design, cool like voice actor. I know that I've been bringing that up a lot.
Hey, what do you think will happen when the mighty symbol of peace is finally killed by the villains?
And I think his whole like dynamic with Deku, like he's almost like the evil Deku in a sense. Like he is All for One's pupil and Deku's obviously One for All's pupil, leaning towards the top of B tier. Next up, Overhaul. I don't think Overhaul is overrated, but I don't like him as much as most people do, I suppose. My favorite moment with Overhaul was when he got bitched by Tomura.
You know what I think, Overhaul? Someone so obsessed with erasing quirks shouldn't have one of their own. Don't you agree? A weak, quirkless loser. And all the fruits of your labors belong to me. Let's do our best. Now you don't even have a thumb to suck on. You're doomed to watch from the sidelines as your dream falls apart.
I think that really put him in his place. And yeah, I guess people like him maybe because he's more of a noble villain compared to Shigaraki. But whatever, dude. This isn't a fucking main character tier list. I'm not measuring them how noble they are. I'm measuring them how badass and villainous they are. Like, he got bitched by the real big boy villain. He was kind of just boring. Let's be honest. He was kind of just boring. Next up, we have All for One. All for One was kind of boring as well. I must not lie. Next up, Annie. I know you see her twice. That was my mistake. Sorry. Let's be real. Everybody knew Annie was the female Titan. Like, it was so obvious. For that reveal, definitely like a C- reveal. But besides that, she was a cool villain. There were a lot of times where I just wanted Eren to just fucking obliterate her with a right hook or something. That weird shit where she froze herself, that felt so cheap and felt like such a scam after all the work we went through to get her. I just think she was a little bit boring. Like, yeah, I'll throw in just kind of boring as well. Next up, we've got Reiner. Even with that hair, I did not think he was the Armor Titan. Like, I did not really see that coming. It was kind of like a slap in the face when he was just like, "Hey, Eren, I'm the Armor Titan, and Bertolt is the Colossal Titan." I was like, a slap in the face really woke me up. I was like, what did you just say, bro? He was slightly interesting, I'll give him that, but he was nothing real right home about. Next up, we've got Bertolt. Yeah, I guess I could have saw Reiner being the Armor Titan, but him being the Colossal, that thought never occurred to me. How could I not put the one guy we always see with Reiner? How can I not put that together that he might be the Colossal? But again, he was just kind of boring. But with that said, this has been Pairy. I'm sorry if this video is longer than usual. I really didn't want it to be too long. I almost considered putting more villains on here, but thankfully I didn't. Subscribe, hit that notification bell. I'll be back every Friday. Enjoy your Halloween season. I know we just had Thanksgiving, hopefully you guys ate good. And I'll see you all next Friday. Peace.